We're good to go.
Okay, perfect. Okay. And Nancy can share, she can have her screen shared?
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
You're now the host.
Okay, let's try that again. Can everyone see my screen here?
Yeah.
Slideshow. There we go. So good morning, everyone. Nancy Chan. I'm with an air quality specialist with Hemera, and I have my colleague Mark Manner here at the meeting with me. And we're here to talk about the air quality data review that we did for the village of Valemount. So the purpose of the study, we understand that there's been concerns about air quality impacts related to dust events from the Kinbasket Reservoir. So the objective of the study really was to understand the contribution of the Kinbasket Reservoir to overall air quality in the village of Valemount and to human health to some extent. So just as a background, the Kinbasket Reservoir regulates discharges for the Mica and Revelstoke generating stations. So the water level in the reservoir depends not only on natural factors like precipitation, but also on electrical demand. And when water levels are low, there will be, the drawdown zone of the Kinbasket Reservoir can be exposed. And winds exceeding a certain threshold velocity, when it blows over the surface of the sand, it can pick up the surface particles and transport it downwind. Now, this certain threshold velocity depends on the size and other characteristics of the surface particles on the sand. So what are the potential health effects? So of course, the first substance that we're looking at is particulate matter. This is fugitive dust. It's made up of particulate matter of various sizes. The size fractions that we typically look at are PM10 and PM2.5, because these fractions are small enough to penetrate into your lungs and cause health effects. There is ample evidence that particulate matter exposure is related to acute respiratory and cardiovascular effects. If you're exposed to sufficiently high levels over a long period of time, it can also cause chronic health effects. Now, these health effects are more heavily associated with your fine particulate fraction, the PM2.5, because they're small enough to go deeper into your lungs and potentially be diffused across the lining of the lungs into your bloodstream. Now, we understand that there may be silica contained in the sand at the bottom of the Kinbasket Reservoir, and there has been some concerns about silica exposure. So here I'm just showing that there's two types of silica, crystalline silica and amorphous silica. What you normally hear about when it comes to health effects with silica exposure is crystalline silica. And we know that crystalline silica can cause lung disease such as silicosis. Over a long period of time, it can cause lung cancer. Amorphous silica, on the other hand, we really see that it causes irritation and inflammation responses in the lung, but there's little evidence to date that amorphous silica causes respiratory diseases or cancer. So what levels are we looking at here? What levels cause health effects? So we look at criteria that's been developed by various environmental and health authorities. They've reviewed available health effect studies and come up with these criteria. For PM10 and PM2.5, the BC Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy has developed air quality objectives that I've shown here. For a 24-hour period, it's 50 for PM10 and 25 for PM2.5. And for silica, the BC Ministry doesn't have any objectives for that, largely because silica exposure for the most part is an occupational concern. So we look towards WorkSafe BC. And as you can see here, crystalline silica has a relatively low criteria level of 25 over your standard 8-hour work shift. But for amorphous silica, it's got a much higher criteria level of 1500. So we reviewed the PM10 and PM2.5 monitoring data in the village of Valemount. We looked at roughly 7 years of data from 2013 to 2019. And this is an illustration of the overall air quality in the village of Valemount. And we can see that there are certainly elevated PM10 and PM2.5 concentrations. The 24-hour and the annual PM2.5 levels exceeded the BC air quality objectives. Now, we understand that the BC Ministry of Environment did a study a while back on the main contributors to elevated PM concentrations in Valemount, and their conclusion was that the main contributors are wood burning and local vehicle traffic. But what they didn't know during that study was the contribution of the Kinbasket Reservoir. So that's what we're focusing on here. So the first task is to identify dust events that may be related to the reservoir. And so we reviewed the air quality data, we reviewed meteorological weather data, and we reviewed like photographs to show when there was dust blowing off the reservoir. And we came up with this list of site-specific criteria to identify dust events that might be related to the reservoir. Firstly, we looked at times when the hourly PM10 and PM2.5 concentrations were above the mean +1 standard deviation. And that's really just to tease out anything that's related to kind of your natural variation in background concentrations. Second, we looked at when water levels were below average. As we discussed, it's when your water levels are lowest that you have the largest concern with windblown dust. We looked at when wind gusts within the last 2 hours exceeded 5 meters per second. This 5 meters per second is kind of the estimated threshold velocity for the sand particles in the Kinbasket Reservoir. And we looked at, the last 2 hours just to, because the village of Valemount is about 9 kilometers away from the reservoir, and it could take time for any of the particles to be carried that distance to the monitoring station. And of course, we want to look at times when the wind directions were blowing from the Kinbasket Reservoir to the monitoring station. And we look at precipitation when it's below measurable, because if it's raining and the sand is wet, your 5 meter per second threshold velocity is not going to pick up your surface particles. And even when they are strong enough to pick up some of those surface particles, the rainfall and snowfall can bring it right back down, and it'll settle before it reaches your monitoring station in Valemount. So with these criteria, we identified 14 events over the 7-year period. Most of these occur in the springtime between March to May, and that's really related or reflective of when water levels in the reservoir tend to be lower. In the table here, I have shown the range of PM concentrations measured during these 14 dust events. So we can see that the 1 hour PM10 and PM2.5 concentrations, they are elevated. PM10 reached 104, which is twice the 24-hour criteria of 50. PM2.5 reached 72, which is roughly 3 times the 24-hour objective. But these dust events they're short-term. They're 1 hour, maybe 2 hours at the most in duration. So when you look at your daily 24-hour average concentrations, they remain below your BC air quality objectives for both PM10 and PM2.5. And I recognize this is a little small. We're cramming a lot of data into one slide here, but this illustrates the PM concentrations over time. The gray line that goes up and down is the water level, and the red bars show the times that we identified those 14 dust events. The orange bars are other events that, we have photos. We know that there was dust blowing off the Kinbasket Reservoir, but either the monitoring station wasn't picking up or wasn't measuring data at the time, or winds weren't blowing towards Valemount, and so the monitoring station didn't pick up any elevated concentrations. So here, you could kind of see that first, it's infrequent. It's only 14 events. You have lots of other times when PM levels are elevated in the community. And the magnitude of your 1 hour concentrations are not, while they're elevated, they're not that high compared to some of your other events that you have happening in the community. So overall conclusions, dust events from the Kinbasket Reservoir are infrequent. It does result in elevated 1 hour PM10 and PM2.5 concentrations, but your daily concentrations remain below your BC air quality objectives. What we don't know is the amount of silica within these PM10 and PM2.5. And of course, the most important part is, how much of it is crystalline silica. The levels that we see here, it could potentially, if it was all crystalline silica, it could be a concern. Most likely it's not going to be all crystalline silica, but we really don't know. So our recommendations for future studies is to collect some more samples of the sand for silica analysis, air quality samples during upcoming dust events for silica analysis to really understand what's the silica exposure to residents in the community. And that's the end of my presentation today. Do we have any questions?
Thank you very much, Nancy. Does anyone have any questions or anything they want to talk about from this?
I have
No
a
one?
question.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Nancy, so just to make sure that I understood this properly, it appears that the air quality issues that we are experiencing here appear to have more to do with what we're doing locally within the community, such as wood burning or potentially other dust in the area from local roads, diesel traffic, rather than the actual reservoir itself?
Yes, that seems to be the case, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just making notes.
Is it safe to assume that the closer you get to Kinbasket Lake from, because this study is specifically for town, right? So the closer you get to Kinbasket Lake, the more the effects, or the higher the effect with the sand, the dust?
Yeah, certainly this study was focused on the village of Valemount. So if you're like right by the reservoir, it would really just be about the precipitation and the wind speed. You wouldn't have the other factors coming into play. So certainly you could be, I guess, more frequently exposed.
Because there's a bunch of residents. Like if you draw a line between Kinbasket Lake and the village of Elmont, there's a bunch of people that live in those areas. So just
Yeah.
a comment.
So there's no way, you said there's no way to find out how much silica is actually, so when we come out of the post office, a lot of times in the spring, there's like, you have to stand inside the post office because the dust storm is so bad. So there's no way of measuring the silica that's actually in that blowing dust storm. Is that correct?
Right now, the station that the ministry has set up does not have that capability, but there are other ways that we can collect samples and have it sent to a laboratory for silica analysis.
Okay, and that would be another piece of equipment, correct? That would be placed somewhere?
Yeah, most likely. We're still talking with our lab partners to understand exactly what is needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And Holly, I mean, you've got a really good point there. You're finding that it's dusty within the village. Now, where is that from? Of course, our focus here was to look at the Kinbasket Reservoir, right? So we haven't done any detailed analysis of what's in and around. We've looked at it on Google Earth, and we went into as much detail as we could. We were looking at what kind of road systems, are there dirt roads close by? Is there any exposed dust areas? Because we see, there's a lot of spikes there, right, that you see. And so our general sense is you're not getting a big influx from Kinbasket. And the other point earlier is, yes, you're going to get more frequent attributed in that area close by the reservoir, but the town itself, we think there's more than that going on. And if it gets dusty there, where is it coming from? It's certainly, from what we're seeing, it's not the reservoir in the central part of the town. Is there other sources there that really need to be looked at? And so what, to me, that given that we've only seen 14 in 7 years, that's twice a year. You guys have other issues that you need, the lower hanging fruit, so to speak. I wouldn't say not, the reservoir is still a potential issue for close by, and you get an elevated 1 hour, but you really need to think about what else is going on within that community where you're getting those dust. And is it just unpaved roads? Is it parking lot areas? What else is going on there that you guys need to consider?
Yeah, I think for so many years we've just assumed, excuse me, we've just assumed that it was from Kinbasket. So I mean, this report will be really fabulous, because then, like you said, we have to look within to find out what's actually really going on and what that dust is blowing around outside the post office. So thank you. Yeah, that's great.
And we're thinking the location of that monitor, right? To me, it looks like there's a dirt road behind it, and I'm not. Is that a paved parking area around the courthouse?
Yeah, there is. Well, no, the alleys are not paved though, and every road here has an alley in behind it.
Right. So you're going to have some dust kicked up from that. But the other thing where Nancy and I were talking about, and sorry to be jumping in here, but you don't get a lot of spikes in the summer. right?
No.
You get a few spikes and you get some in the spring,
Mhm.
but the majority is through the winter time, and that just leads to the wood smoke issue,
Sure.
right?
Yeah,
And
and,
that's-
and I mean, we know that that wood smoke is a huge player, you know, with
Yeah.
the health, you know. but-
Right, right.
Perfect.
Anyway.
Does anybody have anything else they wish to ask Nancy or Mark while they're here? While we can pick their brains?
Not a question, but just a comment. I think there's some really great conversation happening here, and the value of doing this data review, you know, looking at potential signatures from the reservoir, it really provides a nice picture. It's not to say that a reservoir dust never impacts the community. Members of the community know it does, and when it does, it's quite dramatic. But what it's showing you, particularly that graph that had all the data spikes on it, you can see how, from an airshed management perspective, and the purpose of this task force is to say, what can we do to improve air quality? You know, where should we be focusing? So we're driving those numbers down. This is clearly showing that, yeah, there may be some events from the reservoir, but even if those didn't happen, there would be a big air quality issue in the town. And so that's where, if we want to see improvement, we need to really focus on those local sources.
Yeah, we're really going to have to put the hammer down somewhere. No. Okay, well, listen, thank you very much for that presentation. That's fabulous. And we're going to have a copy of that. Is that correct, Wayne? We'll all be able to have a copy of the
report itself?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
We'll bring that report to a council meeting, and we'll have it received by council.
Okay, perfect. And then after it's been received, then everybody on the committee can have a copy?
Absolutely, and we'll make it available for the public to see as well.
Okay.
My thought is it might make a lot of sense to provide people even a copy of, or we should post this presentation for the public, because this will make a lot more sense to people than reading the data.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, let's move on.
Sorry, can I just
go ahead.
Sorry, point of order, if I could get you to receive the air quality report.
Yeah, sorry. Can I get a motion to receive the report? I can't see everybody on the screen.
Stop sharing here.
There we go. Okay. So can I get a motion to receive the report, please? Anybody? Okay, Tom, thank you. Can I get a second?
And Paula.
Okay, Paula, thank you. Okay. All right. So let's move on to item 7, administrative reports. The first one, Wayne, you have a verbal report?
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to give a little bit of an update of a few things that are going on here that will impact air quality, either directly or indirectly. First is that the village has hired a new full-time bylaw enforcement officer. His name is Evan Smith. He was previously working for our Public Works Department, and he's moved into the role of bylaw enforcement officer. We will be utilizing him for anti-idling enforcement, as well as education for wood smoke campaigns for people who are burning incorrectly per se. And just to stress that, you know, our approach for bylaw enforcement, although it could lead to tickets, we're really pushing public information as being our primary source of gaining compliance, because sometimes people just don't know what they're doing is having an impact on others, and giving them the opportunity to change their habits is something that we would like to do. Also, just to let the community know that Trans Mountain is coming through and going to be paving, well, they're not themselves, but a contractor through their funding is going to be paving 17th Avenue. We anticipate this will have a significant impact on improving local air quality because of the dust that's generated from that road. So we're looking forward to having that done this summer. We will be coming to council at the next meeting, looking for council to award the contract to the successful bidder, whoever that happens to be. And also just to let everyone know that we will be conducting dust control on dogwood as we do every year. To begin with, we were engaged with the new highways contractor for them to come through and provide dust control through calcium chloride to be applied to dogwood along with our alleys, which we do on a yearly basis. And then what we're looking for is a stretch of dry weather where we can apply the other dust control. Sorry, I forget the proper name of it, but it's people commonly call it rhino snot. And they're going to use that to apply to dogwood. It acts like a glue, and it was developed by the U.S. military in order to create runways in the Middle East during the first Gulf War, I believe. And from what we've been told, it's quite effective. So we're hoping to apply that to dogwood in order to help stabilize that surface so it won't generate as much dust. And that's my report.
Okay, perfect. And you said that they were going to put some calcium chloride down in the alleyways as well?
That's something we do annually, yes.
Okay, all right, perfect. Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Wayne?
Sorry, what's the dogwood? What is the, sorry.
Dogwood Street is a fairly significant street within the community that's been undeveloped on either side. So it's unfortunately, we're just not at a point where we could actually pave the road due to budgetary concerns and the fact that there would need to be significant infrastructure installed underneath that road.
Yeah, and calcium chloride's a minute. You know, the MOTI, Ministry of Transportation, that's one of their main, I guess, dust suppression chemical. I wasn't sure about this rhino snot that you were talking about, but as long as you guys have looked at the fact, what are the potential other concerns with that? Is it more of a natural substance?
I really don't know what the composition is of that. All I know is that it acts like a glue and it'll glue the substrate together.
And it's got a good period that it lasts for a while.
That's our understanding. We were provided that product several years ago, and we've never had the opportunity to apply it due to rain in the last couple of years. So this will be a bit of a trial and error as we apply it. We're hoping that it'll be quite effective, but we really won't know until we've actually tried it.
Yeah, we have to have a sort of straight of dry weathers in order to apply it and have it stick. And right now we've been having rain every other day, so it makes it hard to put the stuff down,
Right.
Yeah, just to add to that, we're really hoping to have this applied by July 1st. But of course, it does depend on weather.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys seen any bad dusting events this year? Like of recent? Yes.
I haven't. Has anybody else? Yeah, Tom?
There's a natural one in this picture too, is the pollen event. This year's pollen event wasn't that bad, but yes, we can get the same kind of dust storm from pollen that we can get from the reservoir.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Unfortunately, that one is not in our hands to control.
Yeah. Good point.
Having the rain that we've been having is helping. What was that?
So the community forest could do something about that. They could just cut those trees down for us.
Just cut them all down, eh?
Yeah, no. I think the rain helps quite a bit with that. I think that's why, like Tom said, it hasn't been too bad of a year this year, just due to the rain, so. Okay, moving on to the developing an airshed management plan, a verbal presentation. What? Did I forget something again?
If you could receive that again, that's okay.
Yeah. Sorry, can we receive Wayne's report, please? Can I get a motion? Donnie? And a second?
Yep, Craig.
Greg? Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, moving on to 7.2, developing the airshed management plan, a verbal report by Gail. Thank you, Gail.
You're welcome. So this is Mayor's presentation is a great segue. This is just a 5-minute conversation to sort of put out there, we've been working on bylaws and, we have the wood stove exchange program. There's a number of fantastic initiatives. The ministry is very impressed with everything that Little Valemount's been working on the last year or two. But one thing to consider, and this doesn't have to be complex by any means, it can essentially be a brainstorming list, is looking at opportunities and organizing those thoughts and maybe prioritizing what we're doing and what could we do to complement the success of the bylaw, for example, or questions that have been brought up around road deaths. Sometimes the ministry can also support in understanding a little bit more about different road, like we can help connect the right people with different road dust suppression materials and all those types of discussions. So I'm just raising today to see if there's interest to maybe create what we call as an airshed management plan. And they can be, as I said, a simple one-pager, and some larger communities have very complex plans and you can do anything between. But the fundamental purpose of them are just to help prioritize, organize thoughts, even put down, maybe not tomorrow, but someday we would love to do this. And should funding come available, we have a bit of thought around some of those ideas, and perhaps in cases, there's limitations of what can be done locally or within this group, but there's also funding opportunities that come available. And if we're a bit organized around, if we could get funding to do X, Y, Z, it might help us be more successful and be able to act quicker to attain that funding. So for today, I just thought maybe initial feedback, and we could schedule a more fulsome conversation and start some brainstorming perhaps at our next meeting. So that's what all today was about.
I think that's a wonderful idea. Anything that we can do that helps us move closer to cleaner air, it's a no-brainer, right? Does anybody have any comments, questions for Gail, or any comments about the management airshed, the plan? Go ahead, Wayne.
Of course, we take our direction from council as administration, but I can say that administration would look forward to something like this if council were to direct us to move forward.
Okay, so we need to get this on the docket then so that council can approve. Hopefully they approve, and then we can move forward, and then we could have this on our next agenda and that way we'd have time in between to come up with some things that we can add on there. So maybe could we get a motion to have this put on the agenda for council's approval? Donnie? Okay, can I get a second?
Sure. Craig will.
Anybody?
Craig will.
Okay, Craig, Paula, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we'll get that on. And then next meeting, we can start putting together a plan like Gail has suggested. I think that's a really good idea. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Gail?
Sorry, if you don't mind, Gail, I'm just curious, what would be the best way for us to move this forward to council, to ask them to direct the Clean Air Task Force to explore the development of an airshed management plan?
Yep, that would be appropriate. Yep.
I have that, Wayne. I have it all ready to go. I just didn't say anything.
Thank you for saving me some writing.
Mark, you had a comment?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've been focus on is the reservoir. There is not a lot of instances that we found of concern, but it is notable to you guys and people living in the area. I still think it's something to put on. I mean, this is a BC Hydro run, and we've looked at other facilities, not with BC Hydro, where, in windier locations as well, you've looked at wind fences to reduce the fetch of the wind and actually, reduce the problem. So there is other means. Now, again, we're not seeing a lot from our assessment and looking at how in depth we did this, but it's still something to potentially look at down the road, right? We want to, this is a potential, it's smaller, but it's for your community, but it's still something to say, what are you guys doing about it for the people that live close by? We'll probably see that more frequently or potentially, you would have a higher concentration closer, not necessarily more frequently.
Mhm.
But I don't know. It's just a thought to keep on the radar anyway. I don't know
Oh,
if anybody
definitely.
has contacted directly and seeing what they're doing about it in other locations.
Staff here are pretty good about looking into all other things that communities are doing. That's one of their strengths. So I'm pretty sure that they'll have a list for us to look over things.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other comments or concerns or questions? Such a quiet bunch. Tom, go ahead.
Okay, it's other communities. It's partially the question to Gail. I'm new on this committee, but I am interested in what other communities have done for air quality, and what are the limitations of within municipal law and that kind of thing. Where's the parameters of where we can act? That's what I'm curious about.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Yeah.
Sure, that's a long answer. I would say, at the provincial level, both Paula and I, we sit on a number of these types of task force across the north. Paula looking at things related to health messaging and some of the health aspects. And we do a lot of the data crunching and reporting out of what's happening in the environment. So that sort of so we, belonging to this group, can share, that's one of our roles, is to share what we see happening in other communities that are doing this type of work. So we're a resource for that type of information. In terms of the municipal roles, that's definitely a longer conversation. From the ministries, to try to give you the really short version, the ministry is here to support stewardship groups. We also administer the Environmental Management Act, which has a lot around permitting, regulating industry and different activities. But under the community charter, municipalities also have authority that is related to managing air quality. So local dust control, residential wood burning are very common ones that we see in many communities. There's a lot more to discuss there, but hopefully that gives you a general quick summary.
Is there somewhere online to go to see information of what other communities have done?
Yeah, there's some of the groups have web pages, so I can share that. Some of the larger groups, so the Prince George Airshed Improvement Roundtable in Prince George has been around for decades. They have lots of information around work that they've done. They've got some great bylaws that are specific to air quality management locally and that. So I'm happy to share those resources if you're interested to look into those details. Very useful information, but on top of that, there's a little bit of layer of every community is also unique, and great to borrow things that worked in other communities where it works, but sometimes you have to put a local twist on it to find the success in each community too.
Wayne just put in the chat there a link. So if everybody needs to copy that down, it's in there. Yeah. Does that help answer your question, Tom?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Wayne?
And Tom, just for your benefit, that link that I placed in there, that goes through just about every municipality or local government in BC that has done something about air quality, and it'll give you a direct link to their bylaws in some cases, and just a wide variety of details of what other local governments do. Just to keep in mind, though, that this is current as of August 2019, so it is a bit out of date in the sense that it's not.
Good start place too, though, right? You know.
Good,
yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Okay. Can I get a motion to receive Gail's report? Do we need to receive that, Donnie?
I'll second.
Tom? Okay. Paula, did you have anything today for us?
No, not really. I can just mention that we might be reaching out to the community on a climate change project where we're trying to understand how many communities have thought about or designated community facilities that can be used during really poor air quality events like wildfire smoke events and that kind of thing. So, I mean, we're still just in the very beginning stages of that project, but it's just ahead that's something we're looking at.
Okay, that will be perfect. And we'll find out more when you know more.
Yeah.
And then we can let the community know. Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, does anybody have anything they wanted to bring forward today? Because we're just about finished today. Nothing? Gail, go ahead.
I'm kind of going backwards a little bit, but just one comment, and maybe this is for future conversations. With the Hemera work, they did provide some recommendations. So just maybe even understand, there's probably more discussion around it and what the committee would recommend. I could see the council maybe looking to this committee for sort of next steps. I don't know if we're at the place right now to have those final conversations yet, or but just something that should be on the radar, I guess, so that, you know, the report's received, and then whether there's other actions or not at this time with regards to those recommendations.
We'll find out from council, and then we can go from there. And they'll be having it probably on the next, it's on the next council meeting, the one coming up.
Yeah, I think that we can get that to council, at least the report to council to receive at the June 22nd council meeting.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and then we can.
Sorry, just the final comment, like one, in terms of process might also work. You receive from information from council, direction from council, but also if we end up working on an airshed management plan, that type of work can sort of focus in prioritization and identifying what's most meaningful when. So that might be a great place to discuss that too.
Yeah. Okay. So I think our next meeting, we will have quite a bit of discussion. We've got between now and then for everybody to think about all of our different options that we've got, and to look over the report from Nancy and Mark again. And we'll go from there.
Hey, Holly.
Yeah.
Can I just make a quick blurb for the community forest?
Of course.
So we're operating right now, but we're not burning. And I saw smoke in the valley a few days ago. So just to let you guys know, we don't burn in the spring. We don't burn in the summer. We try late fall when it's stormy and windy, and when the weather, when the conditions are appropriate.
You guys are always responsible, so you know.
Try to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know who was burning. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, though.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else, Wayne, that we need to do?
Not from my end. Carlina, can you think of anything?
No, I think that covers it all. I'm good.
Great. Thanks for putting it all together, Carlina, and for sending out the Zoom and everything. You always have it all organized. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you very much, Nancy and Gail and Paula, for all of your, and Mark, for all of your information. And council will get that report, and then we can go from there and look at our airshed management plan and look at some recommendations from the report as well. And thank you, Tom, for joining our committee. And thank you, everybody, and have a really great day.
Motion to adjourn, Holly.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Okay, Donnie? And
Thank you.
Tom, sorry. Oh, dear. Yeah, all right. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Bye.
Mark, where are you located? Oh, you're the host.
What?
I'm just going to stop recording.